Title: My lazy wife inherited her grandmother's fortune and immediately filed for divorce. I signed the papers in silence and vanished from her life entirely. She threw a party that weekend, confident I'd return begging. Start: I remember the silence of that day more than anything else. The pen felt heavier than it should have, the divorce papers trembling slightly under my grip. She didn't look at me when I signed. She was already planning her celebration. My wife, once mine, now a stranger, waited for her inheritance to clear like a vulture circling fresh carrion. She thought I would break. She thought money could buy her freedom and my humiliation. I gave her both, at least on the surface. I slid the papers back, stood, and left without a word. That silence, it unnerved her more than any screaming ever could. That weekend she threw a party. Champagne, silk dresses, fake friends, and the smell of greed heavy in the air. I didn't attend, but I heard about it. She told people I'd come crawling back, begging once the shock wore off. They laughed with her. She needed them to laugh. She needed their validation to believe her own lie. 5 years passed. Not a call from me, not a trace. I became smoke, invisible, yet everywhere she turned, until desperation forced her to hire a private investigator. He dug, peeled back layers she thought were forgotten, and stumbled onto my old number. He handed her the phone records. 300 missed calls. Her own number, her own frantic attempts to summon me from the void she created. But she didn't understand. Those calls weren't missed. They were ignored. We were once inseparable. I gave her the best of me, years of my time, sweat of my labor, every ounce of loyalty I could carry. She, in turn, gave me fleeting smiles, empty promises, and eventually, betrayal dressed as ambition. I should have seen it coming. The late-night whispers with her grandmother's lawyer, the sudden disinterest in me, the way she scoffed when I suggested we build something together. Her eyes weren't on me anymore. They were fixed on an account balance waiting for her signature. When the inheritance finally landed, she changed overnight. No hesitation at all. She filed for divorce like discarding a used napkin. That was her mistake, underestimating the man who had spent years watching her patterns, learning her weaknesses. Pain has a strange way of sharpening focus. I didn't rage, I didn't beg, I planned. The first step was invisibility. I sold everything in silence, liquidated assets she didn't know I had, and vanished. She thought she had cleaned me out. She hadn't even touched the surface. While she paraded her newfound wealth, I built a new life, one she couldn't imagine, one she could never touch. I bought businesses under proxies, small ones at first, quiet, unassuming. A logistics company here, a property management firm there. Each one grew, feeding into the next. I made investments she wouldn't have understood, because while she was busy burning her inheritance in the name of status, I was planting roots deep and wide. And the beauty of it? Every champagne glass she raised, every dollar she wasted, trickled back to me in ways she could never trace. I learned patience from her betrayal. Revenge is sweeter when it's aged. The investigator found me eventually, or rather, I allowed myself to be found. A trail of carefully planted crumbs leading him to the shell of my past life. An old number, an address that hadn't been mine for years, a faint echo of the man I used to be. When he handed her those records, 300 calls, unanswered, her world tilted. I know this because I made sure someone close to her recorded it. Her face, pale and furious, cracking under the weight of silence she couldn't control. For the first time, she realized she hadn't abandoned me. I had abandoned her. But the true stroke of justice wasn't the silence. It was the debt. Her grandmother's fortune was never endless. She treated it as if it were. Designer clothes, luxury trips, gambling disguised as investments, she drained herself dry. And when the wells dried up, she turned desperate. Creditors circled, friends vanished, the party lights dimmed. That was when I moved. Quietly, surgically. One of the banks she owed money to? Mine, under a different name. The apartment complex where she begged for extensions on rent? Mine as well. Every door she knocked on, every contract she signed, carried my shadow. She thought the world had turned against her. She never realized it was me all along. The confrontation was inevitable. She arranged a meeting, thinking she'd finally corner me, finally force me to speak. I arrived, dressed simply, no need for extravagance. She, on the other hand, was frayed, clothes a little worn, makeup cracked at the edges, the desperation in her eyes impossible to hide. "You ruined me," she spat. I simply leaned back. "No, you ruined yourself. I just made sure you felt it." Her voice broke, a mixture of rage and disbelief. She wanted me to be bitter, to be broken. Instead, I was calm, untouchable. The man she left had been dismantled and rebuilt into something sharper. I slid a file across the table. Every debt she owed, every property she lost, every false friend who turned away. A timeline of her fall. At the bottom, my signature. She flipped through, her hands trembling, realizing every thread of her downfall led back to me. The silence in that room was louder than her screams. As I stood to leave, she asked the question that haunted her more than the loss of money, more than the humiliation. "Did you ever love me?" I paused at the door, not turning back. "More than you'll ever deserve." And then I left, just as I had 5 years before. Silent, final. I don't regret the years I gave her. They were lessons, each one teaching me patience, precision, and the art of silence. She wanted me crawling. Instead, she ended up crawling herself, through debts, through broken pride, through a maze I built around her without her ever realizing it. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And when it does, the silence is deafening.